Okay, so now what we're going to do is add the functionality to our application with JavaScript. Okay, so let's call our JavaScript file app.js in our HTML file. So let's write script and let's add a source attribute, and the value should be our name of the JavaScript file, which is app.js. Now let's see if this JavaScript is working. So let's add alert. Let's write alert, and inside it let's just write hello. Okay, and refresh it. Okay, now the pop-up is coming and it's saying hello. So yeah, the JavaScript is working. So the first thing that I want to do is actually hide the manage section as well as the results section, okay, because we want them to appear after we enter the inputs. So let's go to our HTML file here. Now Tailwind CSS has a class called hidden, and what it does is hides the element. Okay, so we're actually gonna hide the entire section. So let's go to parent div of the manage section here, and inside this class let's add hidden. Let's also add that here on the parent div of the results section. Okay, now if you refresh it, now as you can see, the manage section and the results section kind of disappears because we actually added a hidden class. Okay, now the functionality of our application should be like this. When I enter the amount here in this input section and hit the enter key, the manage section should pop up right here. But before that, I want to add some validation to this input. So when I add something other than the amount, then the manage section should not appear, and I also want to display the error message. So in order to do that, in order to add validation to the input field, we actually have to do it with JavaScript. And right now let's go to the input section, and this input field here, it already has an ID called enter money. So we're gonna get this input field in our JavaScript with this ID. So let's go to the JavaScript file here. Let me comment get the initial input, and now we actually need to get that HTML input element and store it in our variable. So let's create a variable called enter money, and in order to get any HTML element with their ID, we can get that by document.getElementById, and inside the parentheses you add a single quote, and inside that actually write the name of the ID of the element that you want to grab. Okay, so here enter money. Okay, now we got the input element in our variable, so you can actually check that. So let's do console log, and what it does is displays the value of enter money in the console. Okay, so if I refresh here, right click and go to inspect and go to console here, now the console is displaying the input element, which is actually the value of the variable enter money. Okay, now let's remove that. Now what we want to do is create an event in this input field. When I type any key of a keyboard, a function should execute. Okay, so there are many ways to add an event. What you're going to do is use add event listener. Okay, so first let's comment create an event. So we want to add event on our input field, right? And the input field is actually stored in the enter money variable. So we're going to get that variable dot add event listener. So it listens to the event that occurs in enter money, and it actually takes two parameters. First one should be the event to which it should listen to. Okay, and the event should be such that whenever I type anything here, then the event should take place. Okay, so for that let's add a key up event. So key up, what this does is whenever I press a key and release my hand from the key, an event will occur. Okay, and the next parameter that add event listener takes is actually a function that will execute when this key up event will take place. Okay, so let's write show manage money. You can write anything for the function name. Okay, and yep, that's it. So when a key up event takes place in this input, show manage money function will run. Okay, so now let's define this show manage money function. So let's say function to validate the initial amount and show the manage section, because that's what this function is going to do. So let's define it. Let's say function show manage money. Okay, so let's open the parentheses, let's open the brackets. Now first what we have to check is that whether the key pressed by the user is the enter key or not. Okay, because if the user is not pressing the enter key, then that means he's actually typing the amount. Now after the user types the amount and hits enter, that's when validation should take place. Okay, so we have to check for the enter key, then only we can add validation. So let's do that. Let's check whether the key entered is enter key or not. So let's check whether the key entered is enter key or not. Now whenever an event occurs, we actually get an event object as a parameter here. So let me just console log and show you that event object. So let's do that. Let's console.log the event. Let's say E, and if you refresh here, okay, uncaught syntax error, missing after argument. Let's see what went wrong. Oh, I just missed a comma here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so if I type any key here, let's add 5, and there you can see the event is taking place. Also the event object is being displayed. So now whenever I press any key, the event is taking place, and also the event object is being displayed. Okay, and the event is taking place every time I hit a key. Okay, you can also go here and check all the properties here. Now let's see, let's refresh it again, and if I press enter here and actually go here, we can actually find a property called let's say where it is. Yep, there is here the key code here. This is a property and it has a value of 13. Okay, and this key code is different for all the keys, so we will use this key code to check whether the key pressed by the user is enter or not. Okay, so let's go to our JavaScript file here. Let's say if now e dot key code equals to 13, then what you want to do is console.log and say you pressed enter, else console log, and inside that let's say enter not pressed. Okay, let's just save this and try it out again. Let's write 5, enter not pressed, enter not pressed. Now if I press enter, now you pressed enter. So this is kind of working. Now if I don't press enter, if a user does not press enter, then he's actually right, is actually typing his amount, right? So we don't want to do that. We don't want to do anything to that. But if a user press enter, or if a user hits enter, what we want to do is first actually grab the value of the input field. So you do that. In order to do that, let's go to console log and say e.target. Now this gives me the now this gives me the element from which the event took place. And if I say dot value, that gives me the value of that element from where the event took place. Let's type something like this and it's enter. Now it's giving me 5,000. Okay, so e.target.value is actually giving me the value of the element from where the event took place. Now this data we can actually save it in a variable. So what I want to do is create a variable at the top here. So let's go here and let's comment a variable to store money. So let's just write var money. Let's just save the value of the input to money, and so money equals e.target.value. All right. Now it's time to validate the input. Okay, so let's comment here and write validate the input. Now in validation, we should actually check whether the input that is given by the user is actually a number or not. Okay, we're just going to check whether it contains any alphabets. If it contains alphabets or any other character, then we're just going to simply return an error message and say that we have not entered the correct input. So let's say if. Now in order to check whether the input given by the user is number or not, we actually have a function called is nan, so nan, capital N, and inside this, and it takes a parameter. Okay, so inside this let's write money. So what it does is checks whether this money is not a number. Okay, if this money is not a number, then it returns true. If the value inside this variable money is a number, then it returns false. Okay, if the value in the money variable is not a number, then what I want to do is console log and say this is not a number. So let's go here and refresh it, and it's giving me an error. Let's see, unexpected token. Let's see, oh, I actually forgot to add a bracket here, so let's do that. Let's erase it here, and let's add something that is not a number. Let's just add a random something like this and say enter. Now it's actually displaying that this is not a number. Okay, so this is actually working. And I also want to write or money equals to 0. So if the user enters 0, then we're also going to display the same error. Okay, so now if the value inside the money variable is not a number, or if that value inside the money number is 0, then what you're going to do is actually create the error message, else we're gonna actually display the manage section. So let me summarize everything we did till now. So we grabbed the input field and stored it in our variable enter money. We added an event listener of key up in that element, so every time a key is pressed, key up event occurs and show manage function is called. And inside that function, we first check whether the key entered by the user is enter key or not. If it is an enter key, then we took the value inside the input field and stored it in our money variable. And we validated in such a way that if the value of the money variable is not a number, or if it is 0, then we're going to display the error saying invalid input. If there are no errors, then we're going to display the manage section. Okay, so let's display our error message first. We're going to add a p tag below this input field here, So let's create a p tag, and for the style I want the color to be red, so text red, and intensity 500 would do it. For the font size I want small, so let's go for SM, and I also want it to be italic. Text center to center the text, and I want a margin top of 3. Okay, so I think that would do that. And inside this here, let's write please enter a valid amount. Okay, so let's save it, and let's see, let's refresh this, and as you can see the error message is displaying here. Now I actually want to hide it first, so let's add hidden here, and since we need to grab this element in our JavaScript, I'll also add an ID of error. So let's get this p tag in our JavaScript. Let's create a variable, but first I'm going to comment and say grab the error message. Okay, so let's create a variable here, var error equals, and use the same way of getting the HTML element, which is document.get element by ID, and inside the single quotes what we want to do is write the ID of the element that you want to grab, which in this case is error. Okay, so now this error variable has the p tag. Okay, so right now the paragraph tag of ID error is hidden because it has a class of hidden. So what we're gonna do is actually remove the hidden class from our JavaScript when the error occurs. So we actually have a class list property that returns all the classes present in a particular element. So let's do that, and let's write error dot class list, and now we're actually going to use a method called remove, and inside the parentheses we're going to add double quotes, and inside the double quotes we need to add the class that we want to remove. In this case we want to remove hidden, so let's write hidden. So now the hidden class gets removed whenever an error occurs. Okay, and the error message will be displayed. So let's see that. Let's go here and refresh it. Let's add anything, enter, and now the error message is displayed. Okay, now I need to display the manage section when there is no error, and I want this entire manage section to be displayed, right? So right now in the parent div we actually have a class hidden. Okay, so what we're going to do is remove that in our JavaScript. So let's just create an ID, and let's say manage underscore div, and we're going to grab this div. So let's create a comment and say get the manage div. Okay, so let's create a variable manage div equals document dot get element by ID, and inside the single quotes let's just write our ID name, which is manage div. And all I have to do here is actually remove the hidden class. So manage div dot class list dot remove, and inside the double quotes let's just write hidden, and that will actually remove the class. Okay, so let's try that out. Let's hit refresh, and let's just add a real amount this time, press enter, and now you have the manage section. However, one thing to notice is that when I create an error first, the error message is displayed, and if I add another amount now, which is not an error, which is a real amount, now it is showing me the manage section, but it is also giving me this error. So I want this error message to hide when the user actually gives the valid input. So let's go here, and this block actually runs when the user gives a valid input, right? All I need to do is hide the error message here. So what I'm going to do is do error dot class list dot, and instead of remove I want to add hidden class this time. Okay, so let's do add, and inside that let's write hidden. Refresh that and let's see. Let's create an error message comes. Let's do a valid input, and now the error message is gone. Okay, and also the manage section is being shown. So the first part is done now, and now for the second part, we actually have 4 inputs here. So when I click here to evaluate the money, I actually want to add a validation first, and I have to check whether any input field is empty. If the input field is empty, then I need to display the error. Also, the percentage of the 4 inputs should be added, and if it is exceeding 100, then we're going to display another error as well. Okay, so first things first, let's get this button right here. Let's just add an ID of evaluate, and we're going to grab that in our JavaScript. So let's go here and let's create a comment, get the evaluate button. So let's create a variable var evaluate equals to document.getElementById. Oops, sorry about that. And inside the single quote, let's just add the ID name. Okay, so evaluate for this, so it had evaluate. Alright, now we have grabbed this button. Now we need to add an event listener for this button, because the validation and all occurs after we click the evaluate button. So clicking is also an event, so we're going to add an event listener. So let's write evaluate dot, and we're going to add an event listener, so add event listener, and the event that we're going to listen to will be click, and the function that will run when this event will take place will be let's say validate manage. Okay, so let's create this function down here. So validate the manage section. So let's create the function validate manage. Alright, so let's first check whether this is working. So let's add a console log, and inside it let's write evaluate button clicked. Alright, save it, and let's see here. Let's refresh this and let's write an amount, enter, and let's evaluate. And if I click this button here, then yep, it is giving me the evaluate button clicked. So this is actually working. So in brief, we actually grabbed the evaluate button and stored it in our variable here. After that, we added an event listener of click and in that element, and we created the function validate manage that runs when the click event occurs. Now let's validate our input fields. So let's just comment here validate input fields. So the first thing is that if any of this field is empty, then we're going to show an error message. Okay, for that I have to grab all these input fields and check whether each of these field is empty or not. Now we have created ID for each input, so we have necessity here. Let's change this to accessories, also the ID to accessories, and here for to emergency, and ID also to emergency, and savings. Alright, now we have created ID for each input fields. Now let's get all the input fields here. Let's create a comment, get all the manage input. So var necessity equals, now the technique for getting the elements is the same, so document.getElementById, and necessity is our ID name, so let's write that. Let's copy this and paste it 3 times because we're gonna get the other 3 inputs as well. So let's change this to accessories here as well, this one here to emergency, and the final one to savings. Okay, so we actually got all the input fields. Now in order to get the value of an input field, all we have to do is add a value property. For example, necessity.value. This will give the value of the input field of the ID necessity. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's check this out. Let's console log it. Okay, so let's refresh that. Let's add an amount. Let's add 50 in necessity, evaluate it, and I'm actually getting this value here. Okay, now let's check the value of all the 4 input fields and see if any of them is empty. So if any one of the field is empty, then we're going to display the error message. Okay, so if necessity.value equals to null, or accessories.value equals to empty, or emergency.value equals to empty, and finally or savings.value equals empty. Okay, so if either one of these input field is empty, then the error message should be then we should display the error message. So let's first check it. Let's say console.log. Let's write error here. Let's refresh that. Let's add an amount here. Let's just leave all of these empty. If I press here, and it's kind of giving me error. If I write something on necessity and evaluate, still error. If I write something on accessories and evaluate, it's also giving me the error. And finally, if I write on savings, then actually it's not giving me anything. That's because console.log error is not running in that case. Now I want the error message to be displayed here. Okay, so let's see. So this is the error message that we had created before. So let's just copy this p tag here. So it's gonna have the same styling, and paste it right here. And for the ID, we're gonna change that to error manage. Okay, for the text, we're not gonna write anything, because we'll use JavaScript to create error message. This is because we'll be using this same p tag to display 2 error message. One is when the input field is empty, and the another one is when the sum of the percentage exceeds more than 100. Okay, so let's grab the error message here. So var error message equals document dot get element by ID, and inside it we'll actually write the ID, that is error manage. Now let's just remove this, and I actually want the error message to be displayed inside the p tags. Okay, so what we can do is use inner HTML property. So error message dot inner HTML equals, and there actually we can write our error message. Okay, so let's try something like this. Value for input field is not given. Please provide the value for all inputs. Okay, so this will actually create the text inside that p tag. Okay, so let's go here, refresh it, add an amount, and this is not working. So let's see what happened. Let's go here. Oh, so actually it was working, but the error message was not showing because of this hidden tag. So let's remove this. Let's try it out once again. So now the error message is being displayed. Okay, let me just change this to 5 and do it once again. Alright. Okay, so the validation of the input field being empty is done. Now we should check if the sum of all the input fields exceeds 100. But first let me reset the error message. So error message dot inner HTML equals to empty. That will actually reset the error message. Now we need to convert the values of the input element into integer. Okay, so in order to convert it into integer, we can use the parseInt function. So first let's create a comment here, parse the values to integer, and let's create a variable var necessity percentage equals parseInt, and inside that we're actually gonna add necessity dot value. Okay, so whatever value that was present inside the element of id necessity, we actually turned it into integer and stored it in the variable. Okay, so let me copy this and create three of this, and change this to accessories, change this to emergency, and the final one to savings. All right. So now we need to calculate the total. So let's create a variable of var total equals, and actually add all the 4 variables. So let's do that. And now we should check if the total exceeds 100. So if total is greater than 100, then we're actually going to display error here, but for now let's just console log and say total exceeds 100. And else, that means if the total is not greater than 100, then we're gonna console log and say total, we're just gonna write okay. So let's do that. Let's write 50 50 50 50, and this is actually exceeding 100, so now it's saying total exceeds 100. Now let me just create 50 40 5 and 5. Now this actually turns to be 100, and now it's written okay. So let's also create an error message here. Let's say error message dot inner HTML and say the total percentage is exceeding 100. Please make sure that it does not exceed 100. Okay. Now if the total does not exceed 100, which this means that the validation is complete, and then we actually have to calculate the percentage and also display the result. So I want to do that in a different function. So let's just call a function here called calculate and send all the necessary variables to this function. And so first would be necessity percentage, and these are actually the values of the input fields, and I will be needing these values for calculation. That's why I'm passing through this function. So let's create the function calculate here. And it will actually take 4 parameters because we had actually sent 4 parameters. Okay, so and that 4 parameters is for 4 percentages. So let's write necessity, accessories, emergency, and savings. And inside it, now we have to convert this percentage into actual amount. So let's create a variable, necessity money equals to, now this is the formula. Okay, so necessity, which is the percentage, divided by 100 into money. Okay, now this money is our actual amount that we had defined globally, so we can use it here, and this will actually give me the amount that I have to spend on necessity. Okay, so let's copy this and create 3 of these and change these. All I have to do is change this to accessories, and also change this to emergency, change this to savings, or change this to accessories, change this to emergency and savings. Okay, so now I actually have a variable that is actually storing the amount that I have to spend on all the 4 categories. Okay, now the next thing is to display it. Okay, so let's go here to our HTML file here, and here in this p tag we had written $300, right? So let's remove this because I want to add the data from the JavaScript. Let's also create ID in these p tags because I need to grab these elements. So let's write necessity, accessories, emergency, and savings. Oh, I actually kind of used this ID previously in my manage section, so I should not use this here. Instead, let me just rename my ID. So let's just turn this into show underscore necessity, show underscore accessories, show underscore save emergency, and show underscore savings. All right. So let's go to our app.js and grab all those p tags. So let's get all the output element. So let's create a variable var show necessity equals document dot get element by id, and here inside the id let's just add show necessity, okay, which is the id of the paragraph tag. Copy this, paste 3 times, and do the same thing. So accessories, emergency, and savings. Okay, now all I have to do is actually display it on the p tags. So again, I'll be using inner HTML properties. So let's say show necessity dot inner HTML equals to, now we're going to use a template string, so use backticks instead of single or double quotes. Okay, if you don't know what backtick is, it is just below the escape key, and inside it let's write $, and in order to pass a variable in here, all you have to do is create a $, and curly braces, and inside this curly braces you actually have to specify your variable. Okay, so necessity money, and the value will actually be passed through it. Okay, so let's copy this and paste it 3 times. For here, instead of necessity, let's write accessories. Okay, accessories. Oh, let's just, oh, I just wrote underscore accessories. Let's just change that to accessories. I want the variables to be camel case. All right. Let's change to emergency. And finally savings. Alright, so actually what I'm doing is actually displaying this data in my paragraph tags, okay, and I'm actually doing this with the help of JavaScript. Alright, and I also want the results section to appear. That means the entire results section to appear. Okay, so let's go here and create an ID called results section, and we're gonna actually get this in our JavaScript. So get the results section, and var result section equals document.getElement by id, and inside this let's just write result section because that is the id that we had created. Alright, so the result section is created, and what we're gonna do is actually make it appear. That means remove the hidden class. So result section dot class list dot remove, and inside the double quotes let's write hidden. That will remove the hidden class. And now let's try this out. Let's just write a random amount. For necessities I want 50, accessories 30, emergency let's say 10, and savings 10. Let's evaluate, and there you go, we actually have our result as well as the calculated data. Okay, let's try it out with 1000, 10,000. For the necessities 50, 30, 10, 10, evaluate, and there we have it. Okay, so the final thing to do is actually create this, add some functionality to this reset button. What I want to do is when I click this reset button, I actually want to reset everything, okay, which means that I have to refresh the browser in order to reset that. First, let's create an ID called reset button here, and let's just call this button in our app.js. So let's call this here below evaluate button. So var reset button equals document dot get element by id, and inside the id let's write reset button. So we also need to add an event listener on this reset button, so let's create that as well. So reset button dot add event listener, and the event that we're going to listen to is click, and after that event occurs, we want a function to call a function, and that function would be, let's say reload, because we're actually going to reload the page. Okay, so let's create the function here. So function to reload the page, and let's create that function reload. And in order to reload a page, all we have to do is write location dot reload. Okay, so a location is a part of the window object, and it actually contains some information about the URL, and it has a method called reload, and what it does is actually reloads the page. Okay, so actually when you're clicking on the, so what we did right now is we created we actually grabbed the reset button, added an event listener to that of click. So whenever we click on that reset button, actually a function reload, it calls a function called reload, and what this reload function does is that it actually loads the page. Okay, so the main functionality of our application is done. Now all I need to do is a little bit of changes. Okay, the first thing we're going to add is a loader here. Okay, so when I go here and add the values here, and when I evaluate my money, I need the loading section here. Okay, so for that I actually need a GIF file. So let's go here and say loading GIF. So there are a lot of GIF here, just choose one. Okay, I actually have a GIF file, and it's actually inside my folder where index.html is, so I'll just directly add that. So let's comment this out and say GIF file, and so let's upload this GIF file. Let's do image source equals to, and then then specify your GIF file here. So my GIF file is in the same folder as that of HTML file, so all I have to do is write the name of the GIF file and write down the extension, which is GIF. Okay, and for the class I want this to be block, since image is an inline element, and I want it to be centered. Okay, so MX auto for that. And since I need to call this in my JavaScript, I'll also add an ID of loader. And let's just save it and see. Okay, as you can see, this GIF is here, so the loading is here. Okay, it's actually doing the animation, but I actually want to hide that first because I want that when I click on my evaluate button. Okay, so let's get that GIF file in our JavaScript. So let's go right here and get GIF file. So let's write a variable loader equals to document dot get element by ID, and inside that let's write our ID that we just created, which is actually loader. Alright, now next thing I have to do is actually do a few changes. So let's see. Now in order to create that loading animation, what I have to do is, when I create on my evaluate my money, actually that GIF file should appear for some seconds, and again it should disappear, and when it disappears the result section should show up. Okay, so that's how it should work. So for that, let's go to that event listener for the evaluate button, and here instead of validate manage, what we're going to do is add a function called, replace this with a function called show loader. Okay, so when we actually click the evaluate button, I want to call this show loader function. So let's create this function show loader, and so function show loader, and inside it what I want to do is actually display the GIF file. So let's remove the hidden class of that GIF file. So loader dot class list dot remove, and inside that just write hidden. Okay, now the GIF file will be displayed, and I want the GIF file to load for 1 or 2 seconds, and after that what I want to do is actually call the validate manage function. Okay, right here. Okay, so for that we actually have a function called set timeout. So it actually takes 2 parameters. The first is the function that we want to run, and the next is time in milliseconds. So let's do 2000. This means 2000 milliseconds. Okay, let's just turn this to 1. So what happens is that after this loader.classlist.remove statement is completed, it actually waits for 1000 milliseconds, and after that the validate manage function will run. Okay, so that's what set timeout does. Now we have actually removed the hidden class from this GIF file, right? And so even if we validate manage, and even if the result will displayed, everything will be done, we have not actually hidden this GIF. So what will happen is that, So even after this validate manage function works, since we have not added the hidden class in our GIF file, the GIF file will still go on and on, okay, and we actually have to hide that. So let's go here in our validate manage, and the first thing we're going to do is hide the loader, okay, because we just want that loader to appear for 1 or 2 seconds, okay. So let's go here and say loader dot class list, and all we have to do is add, and inside the double quotes write hidden. So that will actually hide the loader. Okay, and that's it. Let's try that out. Let's say 1000 for necessities, 50 accessories, let's write 30, emergency, let's go for 10, and 10 for savings. Let's evaluate, and the loader pops up for 1 second, and there we go. There we have our final result. And if you reset it, now everything, the browser reloads, and everything is set back to normal. So there we go. We have completed our application, and there are a few things that I want to change. Let me just create a style tag here, and let's select the universal selector. I want the text color to be 555. Alright, that actually makes it a little bit lighter. Okay, let's just make it 333. Alright. And another thing is that I want to change the font family of this header, okay. So let's go to Google Fonts, and okay, let's go for Rancho. You can use any font that you want though, but I like this one. So let's copy this link tag and paste it right here below our Tailwind CDN. Now we can actually use this font, so let's grab this header file in our CSS. Okay, so let's write header h1, and inside it let's just specify our font family, and it should be set to Rancho. Alright, so let's save that out. Let's refresh this, and there we go. Our font, the header font is changed. And the last thing that I want to do is actually change this icon. So in order to change that icon, all you have to do is actually download an icon and set that to, now it should be either .ico file, .ico file, or .png file, okay. And actually you should save the name of the file to favicon. Right, so I actually have one, and if you want to use the same icon as mine, I actually have a link on my GitHub down below, so go there and download it, okay. The files of all the code that I've done here is also there. Now in order to create that icon, all you have to do is create a link tag, and rel equal, let's just remove this. So rel equals shortcut space icon, href equals to favicon.png. Now this favicon.png I actually have in my folder where this HTML file is. So and also I want the type to be image / x-icon. Alright, save it. If you go up here and refresh it, and there you go, the icon is changed. So I guess that's it, guys. Alright, that's it, guys. I know that this was a long video, but still we managed to build a great project from it. So let's try this out for the last time. So if you do anything, let's just displays an error. If you do 10,000, then the error message is gone.
Okay, so if you just evaluate our money, then the error is again popped up. And for necessities here, I want to 50. If you evaluate it again, then the error will pop up again. So let's change the necessities to 40, accessories 20, emergency 10, and for savings I want 40. Let's evaluate. The GIF file will pop up, but it's telling the total percentage is exceeding 100. So let's just change the savings here and evaluate the money, and there you go, you have the result as well, and everything gets reset. So yep guys, that's it. I hope you guys learned something from it. Okay, so if you like this video, do subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.